Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chapter 1 Practicing Entrepreneurship from the Entrepreneurship Textbook, 3rd edition. In this chapter, the first chapter of this textbook, we're looking at what is entrepreneurship, what does that word mean, and how does it consistently change the world, right? Are you able to create opportunities with entrepreneurship? One of the things that makes entrepreneurship different than everything else is that you are creating opportunities where there may not be opportunities beforehand, right? It's something that is not always easily defined. Everyone can define entrepreneurship differently. You hear all these things now mixed in with entrepreneurship, like entrepreneurial mindset or I'm a restaurant entrepreneur, this entrepreneur. So, one of the things is basically an entrepreneurship is when you're starting a business or you're starting out. Of course, the features of modern entrepreneurs, right? It requires practice. How do you view it? It cannot be adequately taught. What that means is I can teach you what it takes to start a business, right? I can show you, hey, this is how you build a business plan. I can teach you the concepts of marketing, and here are the concepts of financing. Here's what you need to do when you have a potential sales client. I can help. An entrepreneurship educator can help build the modules or build a model of what it takes to run a company or start a company, but it's hard to teach the opportunities, right? Some people have that intuition. They see an opportunity, they go for it, and then they build it, and then they have a successful company, right? I can give you all the tools, but if you don't see the opportunity, if you don't have the intuition, it's kind of really hard, right? It's really hard to build someone to have a positive mindset. I can give you all the tools you need to have a positive mindset, but in the end, it comes to you, right? You have to go see that opportunity for entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs think differently. Entrepreneurs see opportunities when others don't. And something about entrepreneurship is that it's not for everybody, right? If you're thinking about going in the entrepreneurship route, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Entrepreneurship is a never-ending game. Just because you're on top one day doesn't mean you're going to be there all the time. It's always a consistent work, a consistent grind. You probably heard that word, serial entrepreneurs. Those are individuals who started a number of companies. Some have been successful, others have not been that successful, but they're just so into the game of entrepreneurship that they continue to start these companies because they have a passion or they see an opportunity to make money. So that is when you hear that word, serial entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs act more than they plan. Now, that is something that an entrepreneur typically does plan, right? You can't be like a Las Vegas gambler and gamble everything. You have to take risk, right? You have to take risk, but you have to mitigate your risk. But entrepreneurs do act, right? They're not just sitting there behind the desk all day just planning and planning and planning. They actually go do it, right? They go do it. Did it work? Did it not work? How can I move forward? If it didn't work, what can I fix to go and move forward to so that it can work the next time? And if it did work, what did I do well? Can I do it better next time? Risks are personal and relative, right? You're going to have to take the risk. And of course, should be all or nothing, right? You can't just it's all or nothing. And some people do that and it works out very well for them. And some people, they do that, it works out not so great for them. One of the things about modern entrepreneurs as well is like, yes, you have to have a profit, but profit may not be the only motive. People get motivated to start a company by they really want to tackle a social issue. Or they really want to conquer the market. To them, it's a game. right? It's really a game. For example, for me, when I do sales, yes, the commission is great, the money is great when I make a sale, when I get the business, like it's awesome, it's great. But to me, it's the hunt of it, like the process of actually getting the cold calling, getting on the email, having the conversation, getting the meeting, seeing the value that I bring, telling them this. It's a motive to like get to the yes. Of course, the money's great, not gonna lie, but to other entrepreneurs, it's not the only motivation. And of course, Americans motivated by wealth and impact, right? In the United States, we're talking about Americans, talking about the United States, right? Wealth is the biggest impact, and they are motivated to that. And of course, entrepreneurs collaborate more than they compete. I think collaboration is a very important key aspect nowadays. Yes, 30, 40 years ago, competition was everything. But now it's like about collaboration. Hey, you do this, you do that. How can we work together to make our businesses better or grow? And building strong connection with others. I think in the entrepreneurship world, you do get to build those strong connections with others. And I highly encourage you to build those networks. I think building those networks starting in college is very important. You've heard of successful entrepreneurs. They say, oh yeah, my good friend of mine in college, they always go back to their network when it comes to building a company. So build that network now. Start now, because you never know when you'll need to get into that network. Provides this, being an entrepreneur, that entrepreneur does provide a set of skills, right? You build that network of skills, you build sales skills, you build those skills, the intuition skills, to see opportunity. Hiring managers see, entrepreneurial skills, a skill set. We're talking about the entrepreneurial mindset, right? Seeing opportunities where others don't, or doing the best with very little resources, which is a lot of times what entrepreneurs have to do, especially when they start out. You can think and act entrepreneurially, as I go back to the entrepreneurial mindset. You don't necessarily always have to start a business to think entrepreneurially. There's a thing called intrapreneurship, and that's typically what is labeled a person who works within a company, who thinks like an entrepreneur, seeks opportunities for the company, and builds it within a company. Sometimes you get heavily rewarded nicely. Sometimes people who don't get rewarded nicely or get taken account for, leave the company, start their own. But typically there are a lot of people who think and act entrepreneurially within a company, and it becomes very successful for them. And it's a good leeway to talk about, that corporate entrepreneurship. And there's a lot of that in companies, especially major you see that more in major corporations like Marriott Hotels, Walmart, Target, some other, pharmaceutical companies. Or Dunkin' Donuts, right? They have this corporate entrepreneurship where usually it's in their research and development department or other departments, where employees are creating products, ventures, and processes, and really dabbing into what's the latest, newest thing. Years ago, Bloomberg had this show where they would go to different corporations like Domino's and Dunkin' Donuts and Marriott. And I remember the video on Dunkin' Donuts is their research and development, to kind of like their corporate entrepreneurship. It takes about 2 years to develop the newest product that they're going to launch out into the market. So again, companies are always thinking entrepreneurship. They're really looking into what they're going to do for the next big thing. Again, entrepreneurship inside of us, talking about entrepreneurs. They think entrepreneurially from within. And so they embrace experimentation and a different level of engagement. That typically works well for large corporations, large organizations that have the bandwidth, have the money to expand and do experimentation. Not to say that a small business doesn't, but when you work for a small business, especially, a company that makes less than $10 million in annual revenue, it becomes a little difficult to do that. It can be, but you still need to think entrepreneur. Even when a company is less than $10 million, how can I do the more with less? Another one, right, to access entrepreneurship is franchising. You have the opportunity to be a franchiser. Companies like McDonald's and Burger King, Dunkin' Donuts, Domino's, you can own a franchise of that. And what the great thing about that is that when you pay into it, because you do have to pay into it, you buy the licensor from the franchisor, right? For example, if you want to put up a Dunkin' Donuts at a certain location, right, you buy the licensing to do it. Of course, the franchisor helps you put the thing together, right? Gives you the guidance, and then you go launch that, and of course you pay royalties to the franchisee. And so, it's the royalties are paid by you as a franchisee to the franchisor. So in this case, for example, let's say, for example, you and a business colleague put together a McDonald's. You then, of course, pay McDonald's for the royalties, of course, because you're using their name. So that's another opportunity to be an entrepreneur, is by becoming a franchise, owning a franchise. Another one too is to buying a small business. There's websites out there where people who are looking to retire, who own a small business, are looking to sell their company. And usually typical people who have the operating capital to do it, instead of starting from scratch, they just go and see a business, from a business owner that's willing to just sell the company, or someone who is willing to who wants to retire and just give it to someone else to take over. They take over the operations. It's not an easy thing to do, to find a company that's willing to sell a small business, but it is the opportunity. So go out there and see if someone's willing to sell you the company, and that's how you can start out. Social entrepreneurship, that was kind of talking about earlier, right? Someone who sees an issue going on in society and wants to put a company to figure out that problem that's going on, and to solve it. Sourcing solutions to social problems. Hey, in education or society, nature, right? And again, profit is not the motive, but more the motive is to solve that social problem that's going on. A family enterprise, right? A family business. Usually you see that in a lot local businesses, but of course there are some major organizations it's a family enterprise. Walmart started like that. Walmart Corporation started like that. Ford still kind of has that sort of family enterprise. The Ford family still has a pulse on the Ford company. So again, each generation brings an organization forward. And we're talking about serial entrepreneurship, right? That's the individuals who start several businesses, right? They start one business, either it went well or it didn't went well, so they sell or they shut it down, and they start another business, and they continue doing so because they're just not satisfied with just one, and they're always looking for the next ideas. One of the things I will suggest, though, is to not start like 5 companies at the same time, right? Start one, see what happens, and then move on to the next one. Entrepreneurship is a method that requires entrepreneurial thinking. It really does. If you're not willing to think, as the cliche goes, think outside the box, or think non-linear or unstructured process, then I wouldn't get into entrepreneurship, right? You really have to think outside the box, really have to put in a mindset that, I'm going to solve this problem without any barriers in my place. Now, of course, you have to make sure you don't break the law, but you have to break the rules. And it is tough, right? Half of startups fail within 5 years. And not every business and not every startup is successful. Again, there's no guarantee of particular outcome. Again, I can give you the guidance as to how to start a company, but I cannot guarantee that a company is going to be successful. That really has to do a lot with you the opportunities you see in the marketplace, and the marketplace, right? You can start a company and the marketplace will just not react carefully with it. Maybe because they just see no need in it, or maybe you're too early or you're too late. And that is just the ugly nature of entrepreneurship. But it gets easier, right? As the more practice you get within the business, the more times it gets easier. Managerial versus entrepreneurial thinking, right? Again, more uncertainty and risk. How do you think when you're a manager, you're really trying to mitigate as not risk anything at all. You're just making sure there's a structure, right? You're not taking any risk. Whether you have entrepreneurship thinking, right, you are taking that risk. Traditional education inhibits entrepreneurship. Kind of thinking like an entrepreneur in the beginning, but sometimes, when you think like an entrepreneur, it can, depending on the company you work for, it could be seen as positive, but sometimes in others it's not. Like, you have to follow the rule books and you can't do anything outside of that. Again, moving quickly to real world, learn, repeat, practice. There's nothing more in entrepreneurship. They just learn, repeat, and practice. Learn, repeat, and practice. You're gonna have to learn the field, repeat that, and learn about what's going on, and then just continue with that practice. I think one of the biggest skill sets, or one of the biggest ways that you can really learn your marketplace, is having experience in that. As I've mentioned, for college students straight out of college, I wouldn't necessarily recommend to start a business right away unless you've had the experience in the financial resources, but go get experience in the particular field, go make some money, and then start a company there, because you've built your network, you've built your resources to launch a pretty successful company. Trying is a low cost experiment. Again, if you're going to do something, do as many low-cost experiments as you can. Fail fast, and experiment with new ideas simultaneously. If something doesn't work, then try something new and continue to experiment until you find the new ways. Again, here are the 7 components of the entrepreneur. Come up with the why statement. Start with means at hand. Describe the idea and identify your first actions, right? Why are we doing this, and what do you tend to do at the end? Have some stakeholders. I think one of the important parts when it comes to entrepreneurship is that you have to have some stakeholders in there. Calculate your affordable loss, like how much, again, you're calculating your risk. You can't just put all the chips in one place and expect for outcomes to happen. It's pretty risky to do that. And of course, assumptions of, focus on of entrepreneurship model. Focus on how you can see a marketplace and build that capacity to make as much opportunity as you can. See the profit, and see a good marketplace and a good customer base that is going to pay for your product or your service. Again, deliberate practice improves performance. The more practice you do, the more you enhance your performance. What I mean by that, when you go out and sell and pitch your business or the product or service that you're selling, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So make sure you do that. And of course, engage in deliberate practice. Again, continue to practice it. It gains more skill. What this book is going to do is going to help you practice entrepreneurship. So we're going to look at, entrepreneurship in action, making sure there's ethics, right? And sometimes, entrepreneurship can land some people in trouble if they don't do things ethically. And we'll look at some case studies and research as work and mind shift. So that is chapter 1 of the Entrepreneurship Textbook, 3rd edition.